Welcome to the Colts Squad Show. I'm your host, Derek Schultz, and I wish I was a student I had as good of a report card as the Colts do at the midterm of the season.
My name's Zach Hicks, and that Colts Wednesday injury report gave me some Pacers scary thoughts there. So Indiana, we're having a good time lately, but a lot of injuries here lately.
I'm Jake Arthur, and it is a shame that we're grading stuff today because I did not do well in school.
Colts Nation, rise up! It's the Colts Squad. Everything Indianapolis Colts every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Circle City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. It's time to squad up. The Colts Squad Show starts now.
Welcome in. Happy Hump Day Wednesday. It's the Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Derek Schultz, Indy sports talker, columnist for the Indianapolis Business Journal. We will not have the legendary Notre Dame and Oilers running back Alan Pinkett with us. He is traveling. This is the first show. He had perfect attendance up until now. So shout out to Alan for being so great and gracious with his time over the first 3 months. But I do have, you everydayers know them and you demand them, Zach Hicks, Jake Arthur, that dynamic duo from Locked On Colts, your first listen every day. We're essentially at the season's halfway point. I kind of hate that we have 17 games now and you can't say for real that it's the halfway point. But the Colts own the NFL's best record, 7-1, 8 games in a 17-game season, but things get obviously a lot more challenging here through this portion of the schedule with difficult road trips and fellow contenders coming up on the slate. On tonight's squad show, we'll discuss the Colts at the midterm and hand out some grades. We'll evaluate the edge position because, as you guys have seen on social media, the takes are kind of all over the place. People are really unhinged when it comes to edge right now. Overreactions and underreactions from week 8, as we do with every Wednesday show. We'll give you some overreactions, some underreactions, and then we'll take a look at Pittsburgh, and we'll really just look at the upcoming slate in general because it's very interesting over the next 6 weeks, not counting the bye week. The Colts will have one home game before Christmas week, which is crazy to think, with the trips to Germany and some difficult roadies at Arrowhead and at Seattle as well. But guys, let's start with the grades on this Colts team, and maybe, Zach, let's get the easy part out of the way here. The Colts offense, right? There's no other grade that you could possibly give than A+, maybe A++.
Yeah, I would struggle to even go player by player and not give like A pluses across the board to a lot of people. I mean, Daniel Jones in particular, like even if we have these individual grades, like what we were saying on the post game on Sunday, Derek, was like, oh yeah, this was like a C+ game from Daniel Jones. This wasn't, what we've seen of Daniel Jones all season. Still, relative to our expectations prior to the year, this has been an A+. I don't even think we even have to add that caveat there either, saying like, oh yeah, just compared to our low expectations, like, no, he's been a really good quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. He's like, what, a 76 QBR this year? And most seasons, there's like 2 quarterbacks that finish above 75 QBR. He's one of 4 this season, up there with Drake May. I believe Sam Darnold and Pat Mahomes are the 4 guys up there with that really high QBR by ESPN. EPA per play, the Colts have one of the top 5, top 6 passing offenses in football. He's limiting the turnovers. Honestly, the biggest thing has been his play under pressure. I think has just been fantastic. Something that's never been there in his entire career is all of a sudden this extreme strength for him. So yeah, the whole offense in general is an A+. Shane Steichen's an A+. Jonathan Taylor is an A+. Some of those offensive linemen have been A+, but Daniel Jones, I think, needs the biggest A+ with like a circle around it and stuff, because this is like some kid who like transferred in that you didn't have the highest expectations for, all of a sudden being your star pupil in school. You're like, oh my gosh, we just got a new genius here in class. That's kind of what it feels like, marking him off with an A+, and how just big he has been for this Colts team. So yeah, at the midway point, again, this is maybe a hot take, but I think he's been the team MVP, and I think he's been just everything the Colts needed from the quarterback position since Andrew Luck retired.
Yeah, it's crazy to say the Colts are now getting their best quarterback play since Andrew Luck, and it's Daniel Jones. Like, Phillip Rivers was really, really good for, he turned it on like in that back half of the year. But, you had Matt Ryan, you tried to get something there. You had Phillip Rivers. Carson Wentz had some nice moments. It wasn't a total disaster the entire time. But yeah, with Daniel Jones, if we're talking grades, obviously he gets an A+. He's killing it on his book it thing. He's getting the free personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut. He's done all the extra work. Like, The guy is killing it. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor could not be doing any more. As much as Daniel Jones has evolved his game, though, Jonathan Taylor has as well. In terms of adding new things and new skills and getting better in different areas. Because obviously Jonathan Taylor was a guy who you want on the field all the time, but you hold your breath if the ball is coming his way in the passing game, or here comes an unblocked linebacker bearing right down on the quarterback. You held your breath with those things with him in the past. Now you don't have to think about it at all because he is just acing everything. Obviously the offensive linemen, we talked about Matt Gonzalez and Tanner Bortolini, both exceeding expectations. Like we had high expectations for them eventually, but with the caveat they would have their bumps in the road and growing pains. And we mentioned this a few weeks back, but the fact that their strengths initially wound up being the things we were most concerned about, like the power game and run stuff for Bortolini and then the pass protection for Gonzalez. It was the first things that each of them was really good at. So, across the board, I think the pass catchers have looked as good as you can expect them to be. There's the whole thing where there's not been a 100-yard receiver yet because everyone's kind of contributing and doing their thing. It's incredible that Pierce still doesn't have it because he's still getting getting so much downfield work and stuff. If I'm giving the whole offense a grade, though, I will give them a hold off on the A+ for the whole offense, only because there are still some things that we've seen they can achieve. So they started out slow to the season in the red zone. Now they're super hot in the red zone. There's been several weeks where they've been shaky on third downs, though. We could see them be more consistent on third down and, do this and that. We want to give them something to strive for to get that A+, guys.
Jake, the bell curve teacher. I hear it. The bell curve teacher, where I don't give hundreds to students, even if they get everything right, because I need them to strive. This is the number one offense in football, Jake. They have the number 6 offense in football by EP per play. If they didn't throw a single pass this whole season, I get it. It's commendable, Jake, to want to put the bell curve and make them have to fight, because Jake Arthur's opinion is what they need to win over the most right now.
Sure, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I just can't. I can't come off like this. In my wildest expectations, it was never going to be this good on offense. It has been
absolutely not. Yeah.
Absolutely insane what they're doing on that side of the football.
Yeah, she in 5th grade, my teacher did not have a mustache, but Jake reminds me of Mrs. Redgate. Shout out Mrs. Redgate at Middlebrook School, because she was a really harsh grader too. And if 34 points per game or whatever it is in a plus 500 point differential can't get you an A+, then that's a little rough there, Jake. Man, rough grader. Let's see what.
Are we rounding up or are we hitting a perfect mark?
I think we're hitting a perfect mark, Jake. Come on, man. It's pretty close.
Okay, if you want to give him a 99 instead of an 100, then fine.
Yeah.
We can go ahead and do that.
But he won't round it up.
It's got to be like a 99. Let's talk about the defense, because I think it's a more nuanced discussion there, right? Because I think you do have some A's. I think the interior of the defensive line would once again be an A, because God, DeForest Buckner's just been incredible, and Grover Stewart is Grover Stewart, right? I think the safeties you could give an A to with how they've played this year. I almost feel like giving an incomplete to the cornerbacks. I don't even think that it's fair to give them a grade, considering what they've gone through injury wise. But then, the linebackers and probably the edge room would get closer to C's. So I ended up giving the defense like in the C+ B- range.
Yeah.
Zach, you align there?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Actually, the first person I want to touch on when it comes to this defense was the biggest change they made was Lou Anarumo. Giving a grade to him for his performance this year. And honestly, I give him like a B+ maybe, which maybe seems like a bit much for people who watch on Sundays. Like, oh my gosh, they're giving up so many explosive plays. Their third down defense is one of the worst in football. They had issues in red zone defense, but given where he was going when he took over, taking over for Gus Bradley, a very, very different defense schematically than what he wants to run. And he basically ran out a lot of the young players that when he got here, he was like, you know what? These corners don't fit my scheme. These certain players don't fit my scheme. These young players aren't ready, so I need to bring in a bunch of stopgaps. With all that considered, I think he's doing a pretty admirable job. I mean, they're allowing 19 points per game. And honestly, it's a bit inflated because teams are essentially getting the whole fourth quarter to run up their point total against the Colts, because the Colts are just punting after 3 plays on offense in the entirety of fourth quarters because they're in shootout or just game over mode at that point. So it's a little bit inflated, even the 19 points per game against, which is 6th in the NFL right now. I think that they are doing a good job of finishing, they are getting those sacks and getting those timely pressures and getting quarterbacks into mistakes on third downs, which I think has been important as well. They got a takeaway in every single game this year. And like you said, Derek, with all the issues they've had at corner, this has still been a pretty commendable job on defense. So I think Lou Anarumo, I would start off with a B or B plus. I agree with you on corner. That corner is a tough one to grade because I think Charvarius Ward has been the biggest bright spot on the defense when he's played, but it's hard to give an A plus to a guy who's only been out there for a couple of games, even though he's been that good when he's played. So yeah, I completely agree there. Maybe linebackers a D, because some of the guys who started early in the season, it was really rough out there. I think it's leveled out a little bit the last couple of weeks with Pratt coming in there and just being a big upgrade over the Boccies and the McGrones and such like that. But yeah, I think overall the grade you gave, maybe safeties dropped down to a B because a couple of coverage gaffes here and there. But for the most part, I think you nailed the grades across the board for the players.
Yeah, I would come in overall around a B-ish or so as well. I think they have been able to weather some storms really, really well. But there are areas where guys who have supposed to been there the whole time, they're just fine. The linebacker play has been whatever. Predictably, they did not find someone to play next to Zaire Franklin. Jalen Carlisle still isn't back, and that's the guy they sold us all offseason as the reason they didn't really need to do anything at linebacker. Defensive end could be doing more. I think this really stamped what Kwity Paye is, which is a fine player, but he's never going to be, I don't think he's ever going to ascend to be a top dog pass rusher, which is fine. He maybe hasn't played a top 20, 21 pick. I think he was back in his draft, but still a startable player, a player you want on your team. Latu, we could talk till we're blue in the face about what it means to have the amount of pressures he has versus the amount of sacks. It is what it is. Part of the issue there is the coverage as well. Those things are supposed to work in concert, but they're so beat up at corner that it just hasn't looked like it's supposed to. So you kind of have to throw everyone a bone there. But all things considered, how they've performed with what they're missing, I tend to give them a bit of grace there and give them around that B plus area. There's not many areas where I have true gripes and you can't find an easy reason because of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I think,
and we're grading on a curve a little bit, aren't we?
Yeah,
sure.
And I think the biggest thing for me with the defense too is again, if you told me that they were going to allow 19 points against per game through the first half of the season, with Cameron Mitchell starting a good chunk of games, with Jonathan Edwards starting a good chunk of games, with them having to grab a linebacker off the streets. Now they got lucky Jermaine Pratt was available, but you know what I mean? They had to go to the streets. Now they have multiple edge rushers out on the outside, they've been a really banged up unit on defense. For all the health we've had on offense this year, the defense has kind of had to be depleted to, iron out that injury luck, I guess, in a way. So, the defense has been a bit cursed with injuries where the offense has been very healthy. And I think the defense has weathered the storm fairly well. So you wanted to go up a notch these final, months or so of the season when Charvarius Ward is back and maybe Jalen Jones is back here this week or the next week. If they can just get up another level of play, bring the third down defense to middle of the road instead of bottom tier of the league. Yeah. I think we're going to be talking very high about this defense. I think they have a lot of playoff ingredients on defense. It's just, they got to get healthier and maybe need a little bit more juice off the edge, which we'll talk about in the second segment.
Yeah, and we just have to align with the preseason expectations and the fact that, I know some of the names and faces have changed, but this defense gave up 45 points to one of the worst offenses of the last 7 or 8 years in a must-win game late last season, right? In the Giants. And so I think overall, even though there are some people, in the comments and that watch Locked On Colts fans that would give the defense, they're an F, they're terrible, they're going to hold them back from going to the Super Bowl and all that stuff. I think we could all agree that there are issues there, but when you look at what they had kind of coming into the season, and we knew on paper linebacker actually ended up worse, I think maybe than we even thought. We had low expectations for linebacker. I think ultimately they've performed admirably for the most part. Final minute here. Let's fit in special teams. Zach, give me like 60 seconds on kicker and punter, if you will, and coverage units.
I'll cover the non-kicker and punter parts of special teams because that's the special teams I like. But I would give Brian Mason his units. I would go B+ on it overall. I think some of the cover team could be a bit better. And Jake has mentioned a couple times like Gould could be a little bit better on his returns in both the punt and the kicking game. But overall, I think it's been a very positive aspect. They've stolen points here and there, a couple block kicks, a couple of, big returns from Doolin and Amir Abdul. I know Doolin's got called back, but, the process was right on that one for them. So I think they've done a lot of good things, and I think that they've been a big ingredient to helping the Colts win games. So, yeah, I think I would give special teams overall in the year like a B+. And honestly, maybe it's an A- if Spencer Schrader were still healthy. There's a little bit more question with their kicker position, even though Bagley hasn't missed anything besides the extra point. It's still a kicker. You never know what could happen with that. So, I think special teams like a B+, and I could even go A- if I was talked into it a little bit more.
Exactly where I land as well. They've had some injury issues with their most critical special teams players. A guy like Cameron Grown, who's been a core special teamer for like 3 years now, they released him. So Brian Mason has been able to kind of get guys in, get them up to speed, and have them playing at a high level. It's kind of no wonder there have been a couple times where they've given up some good returns in kickoff units. But in general, I think they've done really, really well. Spencer Schrader was like a top 2 or 3 kicker in the league before he got hurt. Rigoberto Sanchez barely punting, but when he is doing it, he's doing it pretty well. So I'd land around that B+ A- also.
Yeah, we already know Rigo's great. We don't even need him to punt, right?
Yeah.
And real quick too, the punt coverage has been the best in football this year when they've punted. They're not allowing anything in punt returns. In kick coverage, there have been a couple leaky returns here, but I don't think they've allowed anything past like the 45. Yeah, which it's a low standard. 45 is a big return, but I think it's like 1 or 2 across the 40 this year. Like it hasn't been like massive returns, whereas the Colts return game have gotten a couple past midfield this year. So I think overall it's been a win in that department too.
Mm-hmm.
We come back on the Colts Squad Show. For a long time in this town, all the conversation had been around the quarterback spot. Now everybody seems to be focused on a different premium position. We'll discuss when we come back. This portion of the show, see, I'm on my MacBook and I'm messing it up. This portion of the show brought to you by our friends at Mazda, who never mess anything up, right? None of our sponsors do. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. Winter weather will be here before you know it, and with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. Thanks so much for joining us on this Wednesday night, or maybe you're watching it on Thursday, watching it after the fact. Thanks to our live YouTube viewers as well in the comment stream for being somewhat kind to me while I'm trying to produce on the air and trying to do all of this at the same time. I'm on location, work location, traveling right now, so I'm not with my usual setup at home, and it's a little less comfortable trying to kind of navigate everything. So appreciate everybody's patience. People running out of patience when it comes to the edge room. Specifically 2 first-round picks, obviously used on Kwity Paye and Leatu Latu. Now, look, 2 different evaluations for those guys, right? Paye has been around for a while, and he pretty much is who he is, which is a good player, very good against the run, not to keep you up at night, pass rush guy. That's fine. He's probably not ever going to be that, but in a contract year right now, and then you have Latu, who is barely a season and a half in here, who is starting to show some promise as far as pressures. It's just about trying to get those results. And Jake, kind of going back on what you said, I mean, we've talked about it ad nauseum. Look, anybody can look up the pressure numbers and be like, okay, pressures are great, but if pressures aren't resulting in sacks, then, you're not closing the deal, and those need to come. I'm not ready to go and say, well, Latu's a bust and he's just he's in the graveyard of Ballard edge players. But I think we would agree that when you draft him and he's the first defensive player off the board, you need him to be the best defensive player in the draft. And he hasn't been that. And they need him to be better than what he's provided here so far.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that a player like Jared Verse went like just after him, because Jared Verse is up there in like that top 8 pass rushers in football on the outside, where Leatu Latu is showing good promise as a young player. Like, I would put him in that like Alex Highsmith, Byron Young type of mold, where it's like a youngish player that gets a good amount of pressures and you know, can get in there with some sacks every now and then. But it's not really what the Colts need right now on the edge. You know, they kind of need that Jared Verse impact player to make this defense complete. And, you know, every team needs that Jared Verse impact player, which makes it kind of a tough conversation. But yeah, I mean, look, Latu is in a good spot for where he's at in his career, but there needs to be a little bit more for this Colts team to get where they need to be this season. I think that the Colts have done a good job with blitzes and bringing pressure from unique angles. They've been getting a lot better, especially in recent weeks, at getting DeForest Buckner his one-on-one situations. And when he gets in those one-on-ones, he's DeForest Buckner. Like, that's your true game wrecker right now. So then I guess the best thing for the edge rush right now is take advantage on the couple times you're not chipped, which they're not really doing at a high level right now, and then condensing the pocket for Buckner to be his impact self. And I think that's really where the issue kind of is with Latu and even Kwity Paye, where it's like they either win quick or they're just stymied at the point of attack. You know, it's like a win quick situation. Like, Kwity Paye is really good on stunts and twists, but if he has to do a true pass rushing situation, he kind of just runs into the chest of the tackle and gets stood up right there. Leatu Latu really good with his hands, really quick with his hands, and can get some quick pressures that way. But if he loses with his hands at the point of attack, he kind of doesn't have the power still to just drive through the chest of an opposing offensive tackle. So what we're seeing is like flashes from these guys. Paye will get in the backfield in quick time on some reps, but for the most part, it's a lot of stagnant reps. You know, Leatu Latu, especially when they have a chipper on his side, is not really getting many pressures over there, but he will have these couple wins where it's like, oh my gosh, here's the star potential we talked about. And it feels like they just need to be a little bit better with supporting Buckner, I guess, where it's like condense the pocket so that way the quarterback has nowhere to escape, and then Buckner can just run into the guy and get him down on the ground. So I don't think they're so far away at edge like they are at like corner right now. For instance, corner, they just don't really have any playable guys there. They have Mekhi Blackman, who's kind of playable, and then everyone else is hurt or young and not ready for the moment. I think at edge, they have a lot of fine. You know, a lot of fine, and in Latu, they have a young guy who can get to where they need him to be, but it probably doesn't happen this year. So it's kind of a tough situation. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say this edge room is like horrendous. It's the worst edge room in the league or anything, because it's not. I mean, they're top 10 in sacks. Their sack rate, even if you take out like the amount of passes that have been against them, it's still like middle of the road. It's not awful. Latu's up there high in pass rush win rate. They've gotten a couple sacks off the edge. Like, it's really not a terrible edge room. It's just not what you would want it to be with how much they've invested into it. You know, they have Latu, who is a top 15 pick. They have Kwity Paye, who's a 21st overall pick. Samson Ebukam making $12 million this year. You know, like they have invested a good amount into this edge room. JT Tuimoloau has a second round pick, you know? So I understand on one end being like, look, it's not this perfect edge rush room. It's also not the worst edge rush room, but for what they've invested into it, it's not where it needs to be for this season. And there has to be some kind of move or conversation, at least going forward, about where it can get where they need to be.
Yeah, I think you can look at like Latu, for example, and you can see it there. He's not a guy who doesn't have it at all. It's just not developed to the level where the Colts need it to be. And it is a shame because the Colts offense, like the whole philosophy of what this team wants to be right now, the offense is meeting that mark where you jump out to the early lead, you build cushion, and then the defense is supposed to be able to pin their ears back and rush the passer and then just make life miserable throughout the second half. Well, we're seeing teams pick up yardage and kind of catch up a little bit in the second half because the pass rush isn't quite ready enough yet. And then in the coverage, you know, you can't clamp down either, and it's just a whole thing. But yeah, the Colts they need more. They've got kind of just guys right now, and they just clearly need that. I I don't know that they can just go get a top dog guy. Like, they could try, but how available are those guys really right now? It's like the second most valuable position and one a team is just not going to want to get rid of. We've talked about the options. We've talked about Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson, all these guys. I don't know if one of those is going to be attainable for them this year. I mean, they'll certainly look into what their options are and try and do something. But yeah, they do need a little more to kind of complete what the image is supposed to look like. That defensive front is just not necessary. It's not on the trajectory of the offense, which I don't know if it's anyone's fault, but like the offense is moving so fast that like the defense hasn't had time to catch up to it. But I mean, that's just kind of where they're at right now.
So you're saying Pay and A.D. Mitchell and a day 3 pick is not going to be enough for either of those two guys that you mentioned,
probably
Crosby
not.
and
Conditional
Henderson.
7th along with Kwity Paye for Trey Hendrickson, obviously. Or gosh, you know
Obviously,
what? We'll be
yeah.
generous. We'll give a 4th with Kwity Paye. We want this. You guys want this edge rusher that we don't care for Trey
Right.
Hendrickson? Clearly, they'd be crazy not to accept it. Yeah, no, they're not trading Trey Hendrickson. They're in Cincinnati.
And it's funny because you look at the edge situation and then the interior defensive line has done well. DeForest Buckner, obviously, I mean, he's up to what, four or 5 sacks. And they've gotten some good pass rush reps as well from the rest of that room and Art at Atabare and some of those others as well. You can, like you said, like overall the defensive line, especially when you take into account Stewart, I know he's not a pass rusher by trade, but him and Buckner as well. I think it's been a good unit. It's just you need some dynamic play from the edge position, and they just haven't really had that. But kind of looking long view here, guys, or 100,000 foot view. We've seen the Colts go into the draft and essentially take one almost every year. I mean, when you go all the way back to Terrell Basham, way back in Bauer's first year, but then you're talking about Toure and Banigou and there are a whole bunch of guys that have been mixed in there. Is there something wrong with how Ballard and the front office have evaluated edge? I mean, let me preface by saying it's very difficult to find game-changing edge players when you're not taking them with like top 10 draft picks, right?
Right.
It's a lot like quarterback in that way. But do you have any apprehension about just the evaluation process when it comes to this?
Yes and no. I think that there have certainly been areas where they could be better with that. But look, at the end of the day, and I say this as a big draft Nick, I got my start doing this stuff in the NFL, being a draft guy. Jake and I that's how we met back in the day, was me being a huge draft guy. It's a crapshoot. A lot of the drafting it's like 50%. You know what? It's 30% developmental, 30% the right process. And then what? You want to have the other 40% just straight up luck is when it comes to the draft. A guy just, figuring it out or not figuring it out is really up to just crazy luck in a lot of ways. And sometimes it's just timing as well, because you look at like early in Ballard's tenure where he was taking these like speedy, bendy rushers like Ben Banigou and Kemoko Toure, and those didn't click for him. But we've seen a lot of those guys click in the NFL. Look at Will McDonald right now with the New York Jets, for instance, was kind of one of those exact same project guys who worked out for them. It just wasn't one of the guys they drafted, obviously. Then he started to turn into the explosive, powerful guys, the Dayo Adangbos and the Kwity Payes, and he just got the wrong ones with them. I mean, Dayo wasn't even that bad. He got a huge contract. It's just it didn't work out here. And then you finally get him. It's like, okay, you know what? He's not going to go for traits with this one. He's going to go with the super high production guy in Leatu Latu, who can't miss, the best rusher in the draft. And then the explosive, powerful guy that went a couple picks later was the one that hit. So, I don't want to be like this Chris Ballard defender, because there are certainly things that he could be better with. But it really is just like, you win some, you lose some in the draft. For every Jonathan Taylor and Quentin Nelson you draft a Ben Banigou. You draft all these, even the Howie Rosemans and the greatest drafters, Light down there in Tampa Bay. Like, there's misses all the time, But yeah, it does suck when you keep missing on such an important position like edge. But I think the process is right to keep drafting them. You got to keep throwing darts at the board, because you never know when this first, second, or third round guy you draft is going to be the one that clicks. Who would have thought that this where college you go? Eastern Michigan speedy, bendy rusher named Max Crosby was going to put on 50 pounds when he got to the NFL and become this superstar, this top 3, top 4 pass rusher in football. You know, it's just so hard to really project these things. And I don't even think the Raiders thought Max Crosby could be like this in the NFL. So yeah, it's just a big part of it is just kind of just keep throwing darts at the board and seeing what can happen. So I think the process is right. It's just they haven't been lucky and they haven't had the right development at that position.
Yeah, it seems like edge rushers are almost as hard to predict as quarterbacks, to be quite honest with you. And like Zach mentioned, Chris is gone for each different kind, it seems like. What's up, Zach? We'll talk it out here. But yeah, I mean, they've gone for the bendy type, like the speedy fastball with Kamoko Toure, obviously. And to some extent, that was working until a devastating knee injury happened, or ankle injury happened. But then Latu, like we talked about, polar opposite. That was the build of Ballard Buster right there, obviously. And he hasn't had many opportunities to take a guy who was supposed to be like an elite pass rusher. But when he has, you can't really say that he's made a bad choice. Like a lot of teams would have picked Latu as the top edge rusher as long as his medical's cleared with them, which his did. I mean, Jared Verse just so happened to wind up being a better player, but it's not like Dallas Turner is burning the world down in Minnesota either.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to like Kwity Paye was most people's top edge. Other than him, it was Jalen Phillips, who has been hurt most of his career. So it's like, it's not necessarily that Chris is making the wrong choices. It's just that it just doesn't always work out.
Yeah, if the Falcons didn't go quarterback in that draft, by the way, and take Michael Penix Jr., Latu would have gone 8th overall.
Yeah,
and the Colts would have taken Brian Thomas Jr., which would have been really funny in retrospect. Because where would they have gone in round 2 with when they got Thomas in round 1? We wouldn't have A.D. Mitchell, and that's just the part of the draft, though. That's just so wild with how it goes. I think the best you can do is just keep throwing shots at the board, trust your evaluation process, and again, for every Ben Banigou, there's a Jonathan Taylor, there's a Nick Cross, there's a Bernhardt Ryman. I mean, gosh, if you want to kill this front office for their misses at edge, you have to praise them for what they did. I mean, Bernhardt Ryman's one of like 3 like legit offensive tackles that wasn't taken in like round 1.
3/5 of their offensive line are third rounders or worse.
Yeah, Tanner Bordellini might be an all-pro this year. He's a 5th round or 4th round pick. Like, you know, for every hit, there's misses, and I think we just zoom in too much on the misses and also on the hits sometimes, where it's kind of a crapshoot. You just got to keep throwing darts at the board and you know, hope that you hit on them and trust your developmental process in house.
Some promise from a little used rookie. Will the offense sputter a bit and leaving the friendly confines of Lucas Oil Stadium? We're going to talk about some under and some overreactions next when the Colts Squad Show returns. This portion of the Colts Squad Show brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Let me go ahead and get the graphic up here. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be kind of a hassle. Between queues and login screens and prices jumping at checkouts, it can be very, very frustrating to buy tickets. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage right back to you, the fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. One of my favorite parts about the Gametime app, you guys have heard me talk about it, it's the zone deals. I'm kind of lazy when it comes to getting tickets, right? All I have to do with the zone deals, I pick the section I want to sit in, right? Gametime then picks the seats for me based on getting the best deal. And then I say big because I know, look, I want to sit here Gametime. Give me the best deal. Bada bing, bada boom. You do it with the zone deals. Check it out on the app. Download that Gametime app now. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download. Swipe, tap, ticket. I'm all over the place today. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go. Download Gametime app today. Easy for me to say, right? And we're back on the Locked On Colts Squad Show. I'm never doing this show from a MacBook again, guys. I
Go to bed.
Decided I'm just gonna throw it out the hotel window. I can't blame that, I guess, on the mispronunciations though, or me getting tongue tied there. Let's play overreactions and underreactions. That's what we always do here on the Wednesday show in segment number 3. I want to start with this one, and none of the numbers seem to back this up, but I think just naturally, when you look at a team leaving their home field, right, which is the Colts are going to primarily do here. 5 of the next 6 games will be away from Lucas Oil Stadium, and they're taking tough trips. I mean, God, you got to go all the way to Germany. You got to go to Seattle, which Arrowhead, these are difficult. Not only are they difficult places to play, in a lot of cases, they're long trips as well. Is it an overreaction to say the Colts offense is going to sputter a bit? It's sputter is a wrong word. That's almost like, sputtering. They're only going to score 28 points a game instead of 33. Will it be lessened a little bit, Zach, as they're getting away from Lucas Oil here in the next couple of weeks, and the ramp up in competition being part of that equation too?
I'm sure. I mean, look, again, they're on a historic pace right now. We're talking about one of the 5 greatest offenses of the 2000s at the moment. And I think it's hard to say that that's going to keep up when they go against stiffer competition and they go to Arrowhead and they go to the West Coast. But I don't again, unless they get injured, I don't really expect it to be that much of a drop off. I think in a lot of ways, one, the coaching and the players are just phenomenal in what they're doing. And they have all 11 guys playing at a really high level. There's no weakness. There's no 11th guy that you can just not worry about, even on the offensive line, including in that, the offense is just playing at such a high level. But also, I think the Colts have kind of worked their magic a little bit with these new kickoff rules in a lot of ways to make sure that they're getting the most points possible on Sundays, like what they're doing with the opening kickoff, where they're taking the opening kickoff with that built-in protection of, if we don't score a touchdown here, we can punt them inside their own 10, make their opening script a little bit tougher for them, and then we can get back to what we're doing with favorable field position and get back to our opening script. They're doing a lot of things that just gets more points on the board. They're not turning the ball over, so even if that regresses a little bit, I still think they're going to be able to put up points on the board. So yeah, I think there could be some tough moments, tough quarters, tough instances, especially if injuries pile up on offense. Josh Downs missed practice today. If Downs misses another game, I don't expect it to be as smooth as it was the last time he missed a game against the Chargers. But yeah, I think at worst case, it would be like a top 5 offense in football instead of the best offense of the 2000s. I think it's going to be a pretty dang good offense regardless. So yeah, you certainly have an eye for the upcoming opponents, but this offense is so good. It's hard for me to really be negative on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be some big drop off. I don't think they're going to come down to earth or anything. I think they're going to continue to play at a high level. We haven't seen any bad offensive performances yet. Now they are going to have 2 matchups against Houston. That's tough. I mean, Seattle. They're going to have some tough matchups coming up. And Kansas City, obviously, Spagnuolo's always got them getting up to something. So they're going to have some tough defensive matchups. But the Colts have one of the arguably the most complete offense in the entire league right now. They have a guy who's top 5 in the league in passing, the leading rusher, an offensive line that the space they're creating, people are making memes out of it right now. Tyler Warren is leading all tight ends in yardage. What's the downside right now? Like Zach said, who's your worst starter of the 11 right now? It doesn't matter. They're all playing at such a high level at the moment. And the synergy that they have with the coaching staff right now, they're executing what they're being asked to from the coaching staff at an incredible level right now. So while logic says they might dip down a little bit, it's okay, I got to see it first. Because they haven't even had a single bad offensive performance yet, even in their loss. They lost because they turned the ball over 3 times, and then they had Xavier Howard playing defense. It wasn't that they had a poor offensive performance. So there's going to be a couple ones where maybe they only get 250, 300 yards of offense or something. Maybe they only score 24 points. But they're scoring 1 million points a game. They're having 1 million yards of offense a game. I just don't see them taking some massive dip in production.
Yeah, and I actually kind of wanted to segue this into an underreaction bit on that maybe potential 11th best guy on offense. Because in order to praise the other 4 offensive linemen, I feel like a lot of us are forgetting the kind of year that Braden Smith is having. And Braden Smith's been just as good as the other 4 guys, if not better than a Matt Gonsalves even, who I think has been really good this year. But Brayton Smith has returned to form. Knock on wood, he's been healthy this year, which I think is the most important aspect. There have been games where it's like, hey, he's been on an island with Max Crosby, not on an island, but a lot of like 75% on an island with Max Crosby a lot against the Raiders and did an admirable job. And then you're looking at a lot of these big run plays from the last couple of weeks and big old 72s out there in front, either driving a guy off the line alongside Matt Gonsalves or on Taylor's 80-yard touchdown this past week. He reached a weak side linebacker from his right tackle spot, reached all the way across and blocked that guy off and didn't give him a chance to make a play on Taylor. So this is kind of the trend with this segment of the show each week, where I pick out like a long-term Colt and say that we're not appreciating him enough. But for Brayton Smith to come back from what he, from everything that happened last year, all the questions in the offseason, had a contract cut down basically in the offseason because there was that, cut in half essentially, and kind of like a prove it deal for him. He's setting himself up for a $20+ million per year payday in the offseason because of how well he's played at such a valuable position.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the physical health, the mental health too, guys, right? Just getting his head right too. There were some questions if he was ever going to play football again because you just didn't know. And then you read Joel A. Erickson's story about it, and it's remarkable that he's back here. We make it sound like, he came back and look, he's his old self again. This is not your usual return to old self kind of story for him. It's a whole saga, really.
No, he's really neat. We actually talked with him for a while in the locker room today, just mostly just shooting it. And he seems so at peace, like with where he's at now. And like his way that he can cope with things that come up for him internally, it's just so seamless. Like he's in a really good place right now. Now his future, like I don't even think he knows right now. He's just kind of living life day by day at the moment. But what we're seeing right now is pretty much vintage Brayton Smith. Watch him this Sunday. He's always played TJ Watt very, very well. I don't think Watt is very statistically productive against the Colts. And guess who's the right tackle who's always playing against him? It's Brayton Smith. So not to put him on the spot here, but I expect him to play at a high level against Watt on Sunday because he always has before.
Underreaction again. We'll go from a long-term player to a very short-term one. Our buddy Noah Compton posted a spin move Sunday from JT Tua Moloau. I always have to trip over that one too.
You got it.
JTT, right?
Yeah.
More snaps, more reps for him. I know we're talking about one spin move, but and kind of in garbage time of the game. But with the way that the edge room has been, I don't see any reason to keep him completely off the field.
Yeah, I will actually say I was more intrigued by a couple of his reps where he just drove the pocket back a little bit from his side. Now he has the same issue as Latu, and this is probably just a young player thing where, man, he's got to be more aware of those chips. Those chips are just depleting him right now in his young part of his career. And I'm like, we got to, be more aware, more prescient of those coming from your side and just staying upright. But I think on a lot of his one-on-one situations, even if he wasn't displacing from an offensive tackle, he was driving that guy back into the pocket. And again, when you do that, you're having at a Tommy Wadabori playing at such a high level. You're having DeForest Buckner playing at such a high level. I don't need my edge rushers to win every single rush. If you can just long arm, get that tackle back in the pocket, drive him back 3 yards, and then give yourself the opportunity to where if that quarterback scrambles out the back, you can run him down. I can live with that when you have the defensive tackle play that Buckner's giving them in recent weeks. So I would be more intrigued to giving him more snaps over like a Lewis or an Ebukam or some of these other edge rushers just for that aspect alone. Because Ebukam at his age and, the injury he suffered last year, he's not going to get that same drive. Tyquan Lewis does every now and then, but it's a little bit different. So if JTT can just keep doing that, JT Tuimoloau can just keep doing that for me, that might be enough in my mind to get him more snaps as a pass rusher.
Yeah, I think you still got to keep the rotation with, when Lewis and Ebukam get back. But, for my money, there's a guy who needs to get kicked up in that rotation rather than being the one that gets 5 snaps, and that's Tuimoloau. Go with the young, fresh guy who's not injured, who is a second-round pick and is showing some promise and probably just needs more snaps in order to get used to what this defense demands and what's being asked of him, really. So while I definitely want to see them continue the rotation, let him move up in priority in that rotation a little bit. it's not like he's a huge liability either, because like coming out of college, like he was actually a pretty good run defender as well. He had plenty of power, and it was the pass rush that was catching up for him. And he went on that, huge tear in the college football playoffs and everything. So he's a young ascending player. And I mean, he's been getting more playing time. I didn't see how many snaps he got on Sunday, but the 2 weeks before that, he had at least like 20 snaps. And I think Sunday was the best he's looked. So you can see him getting better. So yeah, that's definitely a guy I've been wanting to see him get more playing time all season. I was kind of miffed when he was a healthy scratch a couple times earlier in the year, but I'm thinking we've probably seen the end of that, hopefully, at this point. You're muted, Derek. It's the Jake.
It's just tonight's just not my show, guys. Tonight's not my show. The
I'm
Colts head to
sorry,
Pittsburgh, where they've had an ugly history, and it's the kickoff for a very tough 6-week stretch, mostly away from home. We'll talk about both of those things when the Colts Squad show returns for a final time next.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Back for a final time here on the Locked On Colts Squad Show alongside Zach Hicks and Jake Arthur of the Locked On Colts duo. Your first listen every day. I am the lowly Derek Schultz, who keeps messing things up on the stream today. Colts do not have a pretty history in Pittsburgh, to say the least. Now, it's a new era, right? 2025, historic offense, new quarterback, all of those things. I'm just bringing this up for reference. The Colts are 1-12 all time in Pittsburgh in their history in Indianapolis. The lone win was the 2008 season when, ironically, the Steelers went on to win the Super Bowl that year. And it is not really talked about it as a win. And Zach, I know, with your history with the Washington football team and, you're kind of new kid on the block or new-ish kid on the block when it comes to the Colts. But I wanted to know if Jake remembered it because Peyton Manning threw 3 touchdowns in that game, including a fourth quarter little screen pass to Dominic Rhodes that ended up being the game-winning touchdown. And just the fact that they won at Pittsburgh when the Steelers were kind of at the height of their powers then, the late 2000s Steelers, it was one of the most gratifying Colts wins that I can remember. And I don't feel like anybody ever talks about it.
Now that you mentioned the Dominic Rhodes of it all, that does seem familiar. You can kind of file it in there with that game where they finally broke through at Gillette. And I think they hung over 40 points on the Patriots in that game. But yeah, I'm more jaded by the Ben Roethlisberger 400 and 500 yard games with Antonio Brown and the bloodbaths of the Andrew Luck era. You know what I mean? Those were bad. But
the 2019 Hasselbeck start, remember that game got real ugly.
The stadium has a new name now. I don't think they've ever played in Acrisure Stadium. That is a gross name. And It's time to make new memories.
And this Steelers defense, even though it is filled with primetime names, right, has not performed to the name recognition. They've lost 2 straight. They've given up 68 points in the process to the Bengals and Packers. They've really invested heavily on that side of the ball, but the results haven't been good. They're one of the bottom 5 teams in the NFL in yards allowed, which is crazy to think, given all the talent that they have. But still, you watch Pittsburgh this year, and it almost feels like a team. And Zach, I want to be careful here because can they? Colts, of course, they can beat the Colts, and they've beaten the Colts a lot in Colts Steelers history. But it looks like a team that's really not even as good as their 4-3 record indicates. Honestly, I looked at Pittsburgh when they were 4-1 and thought that they were complete frauds, and they followed that up with 2 losses where they gave up a bunch of points and a bunch of yards to Cincinnati and Green Bay.
Yeah, I think that they are very much like a middle of the road, like low end playoff team on paper, and we'll see if that's good enough to get the 4 seed in the AFC this year with with how that AFC North is looking currently. But yeah, I think they do a lot of good things on offense, and I really love the chess match of what this Steelers offense is going to be like against Lou Anarumo. I think that's going to be a really cool matchup between those two sides, but. The biggest discrepancy really is this Colts offense versus Steelers defense right now. I mean, even if you go back the last couple of years when the Colts have played them, I mean, Shane Steichen's 2-0 against the Steelers with the Colts, and his quarterbacks have been Gardner Minshew and Joe Flacco for majority of those games. Jonathan Taylor hasn't even been healthy for those 2 games. I mean, Trey Sermon was his lead back in the one 2 years ago, and that's when Sermon and Tyler Goodson went off for like 100 combined yards in half a game, essentially, when the Colts put up 30 unanswered in 2023 against the Steelers. So, yeah, I said this on the crossover that's going to be dropping tomorrow, that you just cannot beat a Shane Steichen, even when he had Minshew and Flacco as his quarterbacks and Richardson as his quarterbacks. You cannot beat a Shane Steichen-led offense with a static defense with weaknesses up the middle. Weaknesses at linebacker and safety, and you're static on that side of the ball. His offense is so designed to where we're going to use motion to identify where our openings are. We're going to match a zone beating concept and a man beating concept on the other sides. And we're going to let our skill players do what they do best. So, if you're telling him all the information he needs prior to the snap with like, okay, we're going to drop into cover 3, or we're showing cover 1 man here, or we're showing blitz here, and that's probably what we're going to do. It's just so hard to beat a Steichen-led offense because there's answers to those things. The only way you can really slow down a Steichen-led offense, I think we kind of saw it with the Cardinals game. The Colts put up 31, but the Cardinals defense, I thought, played pretty admirable against the pass in that game, is they changed the picture as much as possible. That's really what they did, was continually changing the picture, making it so the quarterback doesn't know where his easy buttons are. But against the Steelers, Daniel Jones is going to know where his easy buttons are. So as long as the Colts don't shoot themselves in the foot and commit penalties, or Jones misses some passes that turn into interceptions, I struggle to see this Colts offense not putting up a ton of points on Sunday. I think that they're the safest bet this week in the NFL to put up 30-plus points. And I know that's kind of been the trend every single week with this offense, but especially here. It reminds me a lot of like my thoughts going into the Chargers game a couple weeks ago, where a lot of people were saying like, oh, this is a good team. Like the Colts are going to get humbled by a good team, but it's like, I don't know what the Chargers defense could do against the Colts offense. And it's kind of where I'm at with this one. Now, one thing that could change the game is the edge play from the Steelers is still very, very good. Alex Highsmith is back. Nate Herbig, even though they cut his roll down in recent weeks, has still been one of the most productive pass rushers in football. He's only getting like 30% of the defensive snaps since Highsmith's been back. And it's like, you got to get your best guys out there, but I digress. And TJ Watt's not having the best statistical season, but he's still TJ Watt. Like, just his presence alone scares you. But I think the Colts are going to come out. They're going to be in their 12 and 13 personnel, run a lot of play action just to abuse Patrick Queen and these linebackers in their rotation. They're going to manipulate the safeties down the field, especially with new safeties coming in, with Deshaun Elliott being out for the year. And I think that they're going to be able to put up points on Sunday. So, yeah, again, as long as they avoid the pre-snap penalties and aren't finding themselves in 1st and 15 and 2nd and 15 and situations like that, I think this is going to be another pretty big offensive performance from this Colts team.
Yeah, I asked Tyler Warren if he viewed the Colts not having a 100-yard receiver yet as a challenge, and he gave it an emphatic no, but I've got news for him because he's going for 100 on Sunday. Did you see what Tucker Kraft did to the Steelers last week? This is Warren's big breakout this week, even though he's been putting up like 50, 60, 70 yards. He's going for a hundo. He's getting another touchdown. This is his big statistical performance coming up Sunday. But no, I mean, you said it, Zach. Like, Shane knows how to attack these defenses. This one specifically, he's done it with much lesser quarterbacks so far to this point. And I kind of wonder, I'd have to look at it, but I wonder if there's like a history of even him in Philadelphia and LA performing well against this, because I guess there's like a lore on the Pittsburgh side of it where they know that Shane has their number.
Yeah.
So I think that goes back further than 2023.
It does. Yeah.
But
100%.
yeah, Pittsburgh's defense has been running the same thing since Mike Tomlin's been there. Like, if you don't know defense. If you don't know how to attack it by now, then what the hell are you doing? You know what I mean? So I just kind of see it following the same script that it has. Like
Yeah.
Daniel Jones. Now it's going to be tougher because it's on the road and it's going to be a very loud environment, at least initially, until if the Colts are able to start putting points up and take the crowd out of it a little bit. So, the window dressing and all the things they do, pre-snap might be a little more challenging. But once they start getting some points up there, they get Jonathan going a little bit. I see it kind of following the same way that it has with them going north of 30 points again. And it's just a defense that I don't know. Like you look at Jalen Ramsey, if they put like Alec on him, I think that's kind of an advantage Alec, because like Jalen Ramsey isn't the same guy he's been, and he's given up some vertical shots so far this season already. So I just see certain areas, especially you mentioned the linebackers, Zach, that they're going to be able to take advantage of certain spots there.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see because they got a great chance to kick off this tough stretch with a big win, because the next 6, as I mentioned, you go to Pittsburgh, you go to Germany to play Atlanta, you go to Arrowhead to play Kansas City, you go to Jacksonville, which has been the graveyard of Colts teens and 20s corpses over the last 10 years or so, and then you go out to Seattle to play a really good Seattle team too. So, the beauty is though, guys, and I think we discussed this, if I remember right, I think we discussed this after the Titans went on Sunday. Zach, they're in a position here where they've created a lot of margin for error for themselves, in the sense that, we thought going into the season, okay, if the Colts are going to make the playoffs, they're going to have to go like 5-1 or 4-2 in this stretch. I mean, honestly, if you split these 6 games, you're still, I think, in excellent shape. It's almost unfathomable to think that the Colts would lose 3 games in a 6-week stretch, just the way that they've been playing. But even if you did, like, let's say, like worst case ish scenario, 3-3 here, you're still in the catbird seat at 10-4.
Yeah, they built up such a lead right now where they have to go 3-6 down the stretch to get double-digit wins for the first time since the Phillip Rivers season. Like, they're going to be in the playoffs this year for sure. And I feel pretty comfortable saying that. I don't know. I think they have like a 98% chance of making the playoffs at this point. So
I've seen that diminish quickly.
Yeah, no, and it certainly can. Like, they can't let off the gas at all here. Like, you want to aim for higher than just making the playoffs at this point when you're in this much of a driver's seat. But I think they've built up quite a good margin for themselves, and I think that Sunday is just a great opportunity. And I love that the schedule gets really tough for them now, because with you essentially in a good place in terms of making the playoffs, now you get to be a battle-tested team heading into the playoffs. You're going to get road environments that are difficult. You're going to Kansas City and to Seattle, 2 very loud environments that are tough. That's great experience for the playoffs. You get these tough divisional games against Houston and Jacksonville that I think are going to be just excellent testing grounds for them. So I love that the schedule is getting tough like this, because I think it's going to be tough for the opponents as well. But real quick, I did want to touch on this Colts defense versus Steelers offense, because I think that's going to be a really fun back and forth. Aaron Rodgers gets that ball out super quick. He does not like to hold on to the ball very much at all. And when he does, it's usually out the back of the pocket and then throwing the ball short still. So I think the game plan for the Colts is going to be a little bit frustrating for some people when it comes to how many rushers they bring. Like, they will still blitz a little bit on like 3rd down, but I think it's going to be a lot of drop 8 coverage, get a lot of bodies just in coverage in general to take away the middle of the field. But we'll see what happens with Metcalf versus these smaller corners on the outside. But I'm really, really curious about how the Colts defense, with their nickel and dime defense that does not play base whatsoever, how that does against a number 1 13 personnel offense. Now, Pat Freiermuth's not going to play in this game. Like, I know it's up in the air right now, but he's not playing in this game.
I don't think he is.
Yeah, Pat Freiermuth's not going to play. That's a big loss for the Steelers offense, but they still have the 300-pound tight end out there, Darnell Washington. He gets that 300-pound moniker as much as Marley Cox gets the basketball thing to announcers and such. But yeah, he's going to be out there. They're going to have Jonnu Smith, who we all know from his days with the Titans. They have linemen they play out there in heavy personnel packages. They have Hayward's brother that's also in the mix as a tight end. So they're going to be running a lot of heavy personnel sets and doing a lot of toss and stretch runs behind that to get these 300-pound tight ends on corners out in space. So how do the Colts, who are, again, this nickel and dime defense, especially with Nick Cross a little bit banged up, how do they fit against the run and how do they play? I think that's going to be a fascinating matchup for the Colts. And it's going to ultimately come down to, can they get the ball? Can they take the ball away at least once or twice? Because that might be all you need in this one. But really curious to see how Lou Anarumo combats the Steelers offense. It's been pretty good this year.
2 Steelers O-linemen also did not practice today, Zach Frazier and Isaac Sumalo. So that's kind of interesting.
Sumalo's probably not going to play in this one as well, as from what I heard.
And Frazier's one of the best young centers in the league. So
yeah.
Colts are just due to add some happy memories to the pile in their long history with the Steelers. I know I speak for Colts fans when I say that. Thanks so much for joining us on the Colts Squad Show. Lock us in for your midweek show every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. But don't forget, we are your place for live game recaps following each and every Colts game this season. And this Sunday is no exception. We'll be back with you to recap the game shortly after Colts Steelers goes final for Pittsburgh right here on the Locked On Colts Network. But until then, keep it locked on Jake and Zach every day on Locked On Colts. Be sure to follow at Locked On Colts on socials and check out all of our other great content on YouTube and TikTok. And we'll see you next time right here on the Squad Show.